embrace chaos.
Welcome to Agency for Change, a podcast from KidGlov that brings you the stories of changemakers who are actively working to improve our communities. In every episode, we'll meet with people who are making a lasting impact in the places we call home.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Agency for Change podcast. This is Lynn Weinman, President and Chief Strategist of KidGlov. I want to start today with a question. What if affordable housing didn't just help the first family, but the next one and the next? Today's guest, Charlie Wesche, CEO of NeighborWorks Lincoln, is rethinking what long-term stability really looks like, from permanently affordable home ownership to energy-efficient homes that lower costs and strengthen neighborhoods. The work is practical, it's people first, and it's even earning some national attention. So if you're curious what real innovation in housing looks like on the ground, you are going to enjoy this conversation. Charlie, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. Thanks for having me on this afternoon.
I am really looking forward to talking to you, and I'd love to have you just start by telling us a bit more about NeighborWorks Lincoln.
Yeah, of course. So NeighborWorks Lincoln, we're actually celebrating our 40th anniversary this
Ooh,
year,
congratulations.
serving the city of Lincoln. So 40 years, nonprofit, serving Lincoln. We've primarily, well, first of all, we're a community housing development organization. So we have what we refer to as kind of the three-legged stool. We have three programs that we currently operate. Our bread and butter is really our homeownership program. So working with first-time home buyers to provide down payment assistance, to remove the barrier of that big chunk of cash that's needed to purchase a home. Within our real estate development program area, we build new homes, we rehab existing homes, and then sell those to first-time home buyers that are low to moderate income. And then our community building and engagement department, they're the ones that are out pounding the pavement, talking to neighbors, building resident capacity, attending neighborhood meetings, and really just kind of tying all of the work that we do together.
Charlie, I love those three programs and that three-legged stool analogy. And really what I hear you saying here is you are helping people get into homes and into quality homes. So this must all be about long-term stability.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me more, what does your definition of success look like then for NeighborWorks Lincoln?
I think one of the statistics that we like to hang our hat on. So in our homeownership program, we're working exclusively with low to moderate income first-time home buyers. In the housing world, that usually means people at about 80% of median income or below. And we couple our down payment assistance with home buyer education on the front end. So one of the stats that we like to brag about is that in the 40 years of NeighborWorks existence, we have a 0.6% default rate.
Wow,
Amongst our
0.6%. That's pretty
so
low. How does that compare
that's
to national averages?
I think the national average is more in the 4 to 7% range.
Wow.
Don't quote me on that, but
Yeah.
it's considerably lower. And I think a lot of that goes back to that education piece that we do on the front end, helping people understand the idea of homeownership, budgeting, the financial counseling that goes with it. But then also, I think when clients are buying an existing home, we couple that with a rehab scope that as they're purchasing, we're inspecting the home and we do any major types of rehab. So if there's a new roof or a new furnace that needs to go in, we're taking care of that large expense on the front end so that they don't have to deal with it a couple of years into their homeownership
Yeah.
tenure.
Yeah. It's been a few years since I bought my first home along with my husband, and I can still remember back, even though it was a long time ago, we felt like we were pretty educated and we both had been working for a few years, had been saving money, but I have to admit there were a few surprises. And for something as big as home ownership, it's pretty significant stakes when you're surprised, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's always things that surprise and kind of come out of the woodwork and surprise you on the once you become a homeowner. I always think it's fun working with first time home buyers because they want to do all the fun stuff with their home. They want to repaint and they want to
Yeah.
potentially renovate the kitchen or whatever it might
Yeah.
be. And it never fails that sometimes that gets sidetracked a little bit a couple of years because they have to deal with some of the not so fun stuff.
Yeah, the boring stuff like the
Yeah,
roof and the water
right.
heater and the things
Yeah,
like that. Absolutely. So if
yeah.
you read the news these days, it seems to me like just from news reports, home ownership is becoming maybe less of a reality for people in these current economic times. I'm curious, how have things changed since you've been at NeighborWorks?
Yeah, so I started NeighborWorks. I've been here about 8 years. So it's spanned when I started here, just to kind of put some real figures to this. When I started at NeighborWorks, it was pretty common that a first-time home buyer could buy a $60,000 starter home,
Yeah.
and we did some rehab, and then they had a mortgage payment that pretty much matched their rent payment.
Was that
Um,
just 8 years ago? Because that number
that was
seems
just eight
pretty
years ago.
unattainable today. Yeah,
It's wild, isn't it?
yeah,
And so now I mean, we've gone through this cycle where home values have really skyrocketed. Um, and I think coupled along with that, we've seen the last several years, we've seen changes in the interest rate market. We've seen changes in the insurance market due to disasters happening all across the country. And all of those things really are stacked against home buyers. And I think particularly like maybe more so towards first time home buyers um, that don't have a lot of margin. Like they come
right.
into our class and we part of the class is that we pre-qualify them based on their income and credit. And if you're talking about a first time a household that can afford $130,000 home, the options are pretty limited.
Yeah,
So we've really seen the market change. And I think what's happened at NeighborWorks is we've started to see when I started here, there was much less emphasis on on our real estate development side, the homes that we're building, that was a much smaller emphasis.
yeah,
We didn't build as many homes. We didn't need to because most people were accessing the traditional market and buying an existing home. Now what we're seeing is that we can build and sell a brand new home for under 200,000. And if you can compare that to what's on the existing market, it's really a night and day difference.
yeah.
So we're seeing a lot more pressure on our new construction product to a point where we can't build fast enough to keep all of the
Wow.
people in our program uh,
Yeah. And
going
then on
indefinitely.
top of that, workforce is an issue
Yeah,
for building right now, right? Like
yep,
I keep hearing from people that there are things that need to be built that are approved to be built, but there aren't enough talented tradespeople available to
yeah,
build them all.
yep. And I agree, and I'm involved a little bit on the statewide level when it comes to workforce development and contractors. I think in Lincoln we're pretty fortunate. We have
Good.
a pretty good arsenal of a Rolodex of contractors that we can call on. But it's definitely an issue. The workforce is definitely in the construction trades is definitely hurting.
Wow. All right. So, Charlie, I wanted to lay the foundation first and get a good feel for what NeighborWorks does, but you've got a project that's pretty innovative that I'd like to talk about too, and that's called Prairie Roots Community Land Trust. I know
Mhm.
it's a big innovation in Lincoln. You've told me across the country people are doing this, but tell me
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, so Prairie Roots Community Land Trust, it was a response. So internally, back in, I believe, 2019, we started a conversation with costs on the construction side, land costs going up. We were spending more and more money on building a single unit of housing. And the question really became, how do we make the case? How do we justify that if we're going to build, if we're going to spend $400,000
Yeah.
to build, which is our total development costs on most projects, if we're going to spend that amount of money to build a brand new home and then sell it affordably, how do we need a mechanism or a tool that really can justify that level of subsidy, like to the
Right.
point where we're subsidizing a project $200,000. So that led us into NeighborWorks America, our nationwide. We're an affiliate of NeighborWorks America. They had received a congressional allocation to explore what's called shared equity homeownership. So it's the idea that you have some tool, some mechanism that's safeguarding the affordability of any home that you build in the long term.
Yeah.
So a community land trust is one form of shared equity homeownership. Um, we went through a several year process of building out what eventually became called Prairie Roots Community Land Trust. But the whole intention was to have the ability to build these homes that we're spending a lot of money on, which we need to do because part of our mission is building, I mean, in the historic core of Lincoln, providing housing opportunities, and building is definitely part of that. But we wanted a way to justify the expense. And in our old model, we were subsidizing the house down to an affordable price, but there was no legal mechanism that safeguarded that affordability after the first sale. So the land trust gives us the ability, by separating the land ownership from the home ownership, the trust retains ownership of the land. Our home buyers buy the home, but then when it comes time for them to sell, whenever they decide to, it could be 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, whenever, we're able to sell that same home through a shared equity model to another household that's in the same financial situation. And I think just to talk about some of the pushback that I've gotten, I think there's some misconceptions out there. Uh, Number one is that shared equity homeownership, it doesn't create equity, that people don't make any money,
Mm.
that they have a place to live, but they're not able to realize any wealth gain on a shared equity home. And that's just categorically untrue. The idea is that we tie the resale value, instead of it just being market based, like where you can sell it for whatever the market will bear. We tie the resale price to the change in median income over time for the city of
Yeah.
Lincoln. So if we sell a home at $200,000 to an under 80% median income household, and say they live there for 10 years, in 10 years, we look at that span of ownership and we say, okay, so the median income at 80% went up by 14%. And I'm just making numbers up,
Right,
but let's
right.
just
But
pretend.
it's a good example. I'm following you.
But then we assign that 14% increase to the original sale price, and we sell the home at that adjusted resale value. The original homeowner walks away with that equity and appreciation, but the home is still being sold to someone that's at under 80%.
Yeah. So you're making a
So it's,
generational impact here, not just a
I think
one-time
so.
impact, but I mean,
Yep.
literally into forever, right?
Yeah, and I mean that's the all of the legal documents, the ground lease that governs this is all written. It's 99 years. We can't use the word, lawyers tell me we can't use forever. So we
Okay.
have to use 99 years.
Okay. That sounds
And
like a
that,
long time. That'll outlive probably both of us, Charlie. You
well,
seem
and
young and in good health, but probably the chances of either of us being here in 99 years pretty low.
exactly. Yeah. And it even, every time there's a transfer, it resets. So it's a 99 years from the previous sale. So essentially what we're able to do is we can use our subsidy sources, grants that we receive to build new homes, but we're able to keep them permanently affordable so that they're serving that same income level sale after sale after sale instead of it being kind of a one and done
Yeah.
type model.
That sounds good. I like that term permanently affordable as well. And what I
Yeah,
hear you say with that example is that the homeowner does build equity. They do build a level of wealth that will help them moving forward, but it's proportionate to their investment, not for the
correct.
whole amount, which NeighborWorks invested in significantly in addition to their investment. Is that a fair representation?
Yep, absolutely. And I
Okay.
think, I mean, when I talk about this, so to your point, when we started this talking about this, nationwide, land trusts have been in operation for 70 years. We're the first in Nebraska, but that doesn't mean it's been a very effective tool in other parts of the country.
Yeah,
So we've really had to educate our market and the state of Nebraska as to what's going on in other parts of the country where it's been really effective. And I think really at the end of the day, the goal, and this is what I tell when I speak on this, I view it as a stepping stone approach that we're
yeah,
taking households that are renting, where there's no ability to generate generational wealth. We're putting them into a shared equity model through the land trust where they can live in a home, it's their home, they can treat it like their own. They can have a garden. They can do all the things that home ownership brings. They are resale restricted, but
yeah,
they are walking away when they decide to make that next move with, in theory, is enough to create a down payment for the traditional purchase.
yeah.
So it's a renter to shared equity to traditional market. That's kind of the trajectory that we're trying to set up.
That makes a lot of sense to me. That's a great model. And honestly, I hadn't heard of it until you and I first talked about this a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
Charlie. So I think it's kind of cool to know that A, something innovative like this is happening in Lincoln, but yet it's got 70 years of trial outside of Nebraska that you're able
Yep.
to lean in on.
Yep.
So I wanted to talk about something else that you have going on. I mean, I first reached out to you because I saw a New York Times article that highlighted your approach to tying energy efficiency to housing affordability. And whenever you see an organization, a nonprofit from Lincoln, Nebraska, in the New York Times, you say, huh, something interesting must be going on here. Can you tell us a little bit about that program and how the article came about?
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty cool. I try to downplay most things, but to have an article, to have your name in the New York Times is something.
It's big. I mean, I will
My
tell you, Charlie, a lot of organizations pay PR firms a lot of money for that kind of
yeah,
exposure. And so I love to see it when it just happens because of a really great program.
and my mom certainly got a lot of. She shared it with a lot of people.
Is the article still on her fridge? That is my question.
I'm fairly certain.
Yeah.
I haven't been there, but I'm fairly certain.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the South of Downtown Rental Rehab Program, which is what the New York Times article was about, is it's actually a program funded through the city of Lincoln, through the Urban Development Department. And a handful of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, NeighborWorks worked with Urban Development to kind of put together the bones of this program, the structure. And when we first, I mentioned in the article, when we first started talking about rental rehab, there's some concerns that surface because you start thinking about, okay, we're giving grant money to landlords. What are they going to do once they've made the improvements? What does that mean for the existing tenants? Are they going to raise the rents? So one of the things we really focused in on is how do we structure this program so that there's some teeth if a landlord receives this grant funding to make infrastructure upgrades, to make upgrades to a unit, what's keeping them from raising the rents? So part of the structure is that the grant money is actually structured as a lien on the program or on the property, and they have to maintain compliance with HUD fair market rents. They can't increase rents beyond that threshold, which is determined every year by HUD, Housing and Urban Development for the city of Lincoln. When we had that in place, it gave me a lot of peace of mind.
Yeah.
Because what we found, particularly in the south of downtown, is that that's an area where there's a lot of what's called NOAH, or naturally occurring affordable housing. Most landlords that we talk to were already renting at levels that were considered affordable. So it was really, how do we inject some money to make improvements that benefit the lived experience of those tenants, that allow property owners to make major investments and improvements in their buildings, all while assuring that rents aren't going to go up.
Yeah.
So that's really that all of that came together to create the South of Downtown Rental Rehab Program. And we administer that program. We helped on the front end to kind of structure it. But it is a city, or it's a program run through the city of Lincoln. And it's been really successful. We've been able to rehab about 100 apartment units every year for the
Wow.
last 3 years.
That's a lot. How many people live in a typical apartment? I mean, that's a lot
Well,
of people who are
and it
finding affordable places to live that are well taken care of.
sure. And I think what's interesting is that we intentionally, the first 3 years, we've tried to get a cross section of building types. So we've had everything from single family homes that are rental up to, I think our biggest building was 53 units. So that 53 unit building, they're eligible for $15,000 per unit. So that's a pretty sizable chunk of money.
Yeah.
And they were able to use it. It wasn't the flashy stuff. It wasn't quartz countertops and new
Yeah.
cabinets, although they did put in new cabinets. But it was things like upgrading infrastructure, the sewer system, the water
Right.
service. Um, Really, as I talked to landlords, the things that they wanted to be able to improve, but didn't have the cash to do it. I mean, that's a major expense. And if you have properties that the rents aren't bringing in a whole lot of money, it's really hard to have that cash set aside to make those big improvements. So it's been very successful. I think where the New York Times, their angle, it was part of a series called 50. It was basically 50 environmental solutions in 50 states. And what we've been able to do is we've been able to basically couple the South of Downtown program with assistance through Lincoln Electric system. Um, so every property that we were involved with, we do an inspection and we do a walkthrough, and LES is right there beside us. And if they can upgrade the efficiency, if they can get off of old boiler system and go to more of a modern mini split system, they're making that investment. And that's in addition to the 15,000 per unit that the
Wow.
city is providing.
So really,
So
I
it's
mean, and you're going in and doing it at the same time. So I'm
right,
assuming you're minimizing downtime, which also
right.
costs these multi-unit owners money, right?
Yep, absolutely. So it's been, I mean, from just a flat out rehab perspective, being able to provide, I mean, upgraded lived experience, um, but also the sustainability side with LES. And then most of the time, owners also contribute a certain amount. So it's not uncommon that the rental rehab program might be doing some of the more infrastructure based things. The owner is taking care of repainting, reflooring, um, and then LES might be doing upgraded windows, upgraded heating and cooling. And you really end up with it on the back end, an apartment, a unit that is both renovated and much more energy efficient,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, big picture, that's great. But also in terms of the pocketbook of the tenant, I mean, they're paying less in utility costs. So there's a lot of wins going on with that
Absolutely.
program.
Charlie, one of the things I'm thinking about here is I've heard you talk from the beginning of our conversation to now. You're involved with government and policy. I hear you're involved with new construction and rehab. You're involved with community trust. You're involved with energy efficiency. You're involved with just helping people generationally, improve their living situation and their financial standing. When you think about, like, I'm picturing this wagon wheel with you right in the middle of it. Like, what's the hardest part of balancing all of those different things?
Oh, I think that's one of the joys of this job.
Ah, okay.
I think that's really where, like, if we're talking personally, like, that's where I thrive. I love being able to have conversations that might seem a little separate at the time,
Yeah.
but how do we take those things and we kind of fit them together? I think, I mean, that's what really brings me a lot of joy is being able to have conversations with the stakeholders that we have across the city. And I mean, Lincoln is pretty unique. We
Yes.
all know it's the big small town. Everyone
Right.
knows
And we're all very
everyone.
proud of it. Those of us that live here,
Exactly.
and I know we have a lot of listeners from outside of Lincoln, but those of us that live here in Lincoln, we're very proud of our community.
Absolutely. And we should be. But I think that's where, I mean, I really enjoy being able to kind of have the big picture. Um, and there are sometimes, I mean, things I think what I become guilty of is like wanting to expand when I put my NeighborWorks Lincoln hat on, something that might not necessarily be mission fit,
Yeah.
but still could be good for the city. It's like how do we work through that and kind of put it on the plate of people that it makes more sense. So
That
yeah, I
balance of service and mission focus, right? Is
yeah,
always, there's always some tension there.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. But that's really, I mean, I think it's challenging because I mean, a lot of the work that we do, all of the work that we do is based on community trust.
Yeah.
Um, so it's not just talking to policymakers or government officials. It's also having conversations with community members and understanding what the implications are and seeing it from their perspective. I think one of the things I'm most proud of is since I took over this role or took on this role, um, our real estate development has been very community focused to the
Mm.
point we have a 18 unit project on 3 acres that we really wanted to engage and not just not just hear from the neighbors, but actually include them in the process.
Wow, that's pretty cool because sometimes neighbors, I mean, myself included, every once in a while you're like, I don't know about this new project that's coming in
Yep,
here.
yep.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, we put together a resident advisory board. We kind of had to get through the pie in the sky. Like this project isn't going to be all things to everyone,
Right.
but it's like once you can get down to like what really matters and get get the opinions of the community, where NeighborWorks Lincoln was at, what's actually achievable, then you're really, I mean, I think you're onto something pretty special, and I feel good about that process.
I love that. Charlie, I'm really interested, and that is a great lead into my next question. I'm always really interested in how leaders find the positions that you're in because it feels like, I don't know if this found position found you or you found it, but it feels like you're the right leader for the time of NeighborWorks Lincoln. And what's your journey been like to get into this role?
Oh, Lynn, that's a great question. So a little bit unexpected. So I
Yeah.
actually started in college. I was a biology major. Um, I started my professional career out of college as a seventh and eighth grade science teacher at Pound Middle School.
All right.
Um,
Wow, bless you for being a middle
and
school teacher.
I think that's kind of that experience has kind of helped shape some of my perspective.
You
But
can deal with anyone at this point.
yeah, but I think so that experience I taught for about 10 years, and had worked construction through high school, a little bit in college. And with my summers off teaching, I started basically just reaching out to friends, family, people I knew. And it's like, hey, do you have odd jobs that I could do? And that eventually, what started as just kind of summer work, something to give back, to get to meet people and know people, serve people. Um, that turned into a full-time gig. So I operated what was called HomeWorks, was my remodeling company. We did a lot of kitchen, bath, basement finishing. Um, and I did that for several years and was just kind of starting to kind of get self-employment figured out. And a friend of mine sent me a job description for the rehab manager role at NeighborWorks Lincoln. And part of that was teaching our homebuyer education class. So it was kind of this blending of the construction background with the education side. And I remember thinking, I read through the description and I said, okay, yeah, I'll look into this. So I called to our office and, hey, are you still hiring? And sure enough, they were. So we had a conversation, and a couple weeks later, I was offered the rehab manager role. And since then, it's just been, I think what I found is that the nonprofit world is really, I mean, where my heart's always been.
Yeah.
I think people are just wired one way or another, and I think it's just been a pretty natural fit. But it's been working up from rehab manager to director of real estate development to chief of staff, and then assuming the CEO role from there
So you really,
over the last
even
8
your
years.
journey through NeighborWorks, you had a lot of different experiences as
Mhm.
before you got to this role, which really had to lay a
Yeah.
nice foundation.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, if I'm being honest, one of the things that I really miss, I spend a lot of time talking to people, but it's not necessarily the homeowners that we're
Yeah.
working with on a day-to-day basis. And that's one thing that I really miss is when I was rehab manager, I was working day in and day out, helping people through the home buying process. And I was kind of the person they called when they had a question or they needed to be, I don't know, calm down a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it's one of the things I really miss is being able to have that interaction. So I try to stay rooted in that and take advantage of those opportunities when I have them. But it's definitely been something that it's been different.
Yep. Charlie, this is an audio podcast. So most of our listeners who are probably driving or gardening or doing housework or all the things people do while listening to podcasts, they don't get to see you, but I get to see you while we're doing this interview. And what I want to tell people is every time you talk about homeowners, I see your face light up a little bit. And I'm curious, do you have any stories to share? I mean, obviously we don't want you to give any personal details, but any stories to share that might be a good example of this work coming together?
Yeah, I have one and it's kind of my go-to. And I usually wrap it in that a lot of times in this work, we make assumptions of what people know.
Yeah,
And assumptions can, as we all know, can be really dangerous.
right?
But there was one household that I was working with, and they were an immigrant family that had been here for, I think, at the time, they'd been here about 5 years. And they were in the process of buying their first house. And I was the rehab manager at the time and was walking through the house with them, pointing out all of the items that we were going to repair or replace once they bought the house to help them out. And very typical. It was our very similar process to every other transaction. Um, but we ended up outside, and I had been talking to the son, who was translating to his dad, to his father, and the son asked me, like basically pointing at the front and the backyard. He was asking me like, who owns the green space? Like, there's the house in the middle, the front and the backyard, and it really caught me off guard. And I said, so like, I just want to make sure, like he was asking about the front and backyard.
Yeah,
And I said, well,
yeah.
that's yours. Like you're
Oh,
buying this entire property.
yeah.
And like, I just, so I remember like tears immediately from the father's
Oh,
eyes and like just this, like, here he thought he was only buying the house and someone else was going to
Wow.
own the yard. But to have a place for his kids to play, I mean, that was really special. And that moment really taught me
Mm,
in this work, we have to be really careful of the assumptions we make, and that everyone, I say it almost daily, you only know what you know. You don't
right,
know what you don't know. And
right. And why
um,
would you know that, right? Like if you have come from
exactly.
a culture or a different place where,
Yeah.
that's not the custom, why would you know that?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Charlie, a lot of our listeners want to make a difference. I mean, we're the Agency for Change podcast, and I'm curious because you are a change maker, a difference maker, what advice would you have for somebody who's looking to make meaningful change in the world?
I would say, I think, I always say it's, you need to show up. Um,
Show up.
I think in this day and age, there's so much, I mean, for lack of a better term, there's the keyboard
Yeah.
worrying.
Yeah.
Um, and I think whether it's volunteering for a board, I mean, volunteering at an organization, signing up for a committee with the city, showing up at a neighborhood association meeting, I think any of those things, it's true that decisions are made by people that are in the room. And
Mhm.
I think the most important thing, I mean, whatever your voice is, whatever your opinion is, it's important to show up. And I think what we're seeing is people are kind of replacing social media with that actual experience. And
Mhm.
it's not a one for one. Like,
Yeah.
it is important to show up and to be present, and whatever that means.
Yeah.
It could be something small, it could be something big. But I think showing up is definitely the first step.
Real connection is meaningful for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So, Charlie, for people who might want to show up on behalf of NeighborWorks, whether that's volunteering, donation, just finding out more about the programs, how can they find information about you?
Yeah, of course. So number one, we have our website, nwlincoln.org, has all of our program information, staff information, project information. It's kind of the clearinghouse for everything. Our land trust Prairie Roots also has a website, prairierootclt.org.
All right.
And then both of those entities are also on Facebook and Instagram. I think Facebook and Instagram give us kind of more authentic, kind of day-to-day types of things. So it's a little bit different,
Yeah.
but any of those avenues are ways that people can
Sounds
get some
great.
more information.
We'll have all of those links in the show notes for this episode as well. So if you didn't get those written down, you can jump on those later. All right, Charlie, I'm asking you my favorite question next as we kind of wind down on this podcast. Our
Yeah.
listeners know I am inspired by motivational quotes, and I would love a Charlie Wesche original quote to inspire our listeners.
Okay. I've been thinking about this, and my staff, if they listen to this, they're gonna laugh. Um, but mine is embrace chaos.
Oh,
I think so often we want things that are neat and tidy and predictable. And I think when you look at major change that's happened at its origin, there has always been a sense of chaos. And I
yeah.
don't mean chaos like completely chaotic. I mean,
Right, right.
and I'm as guilty of this as anyone. I'm type A personality. I want the policy and the procedure and everything to go like hunky dory.
Yeah.
But I also think, and I mean, I think some of this goes back to maybe my middle school teaching roots, where it is a little bit of chaos.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, I mean, if you're looking at making substantial change, and I think I'm really proud of the land trust that we've started. There, we are we are getting to a point where it feels less chaotic. It's it still is a little bit like there's still a lot of questions. It's very new. Um, but we have our partners that are on the same page. It wasn't always that way, and it felt very, I mean, chaotic.
Yeah.
And I think if we had given up because of that, we would have not seen the fruits of what we've been able to do. So I think even if it's just a little bit, like being
Yeah.
okay with a little bit of things being out of order or a little bit of chaos, I think it pushes you in a really good direction.
Charlie, it occurs to me with all of the innovation that's going on at NeighborWorks Lincoln, it occurs to me that you could have just stayed comfortable. You could have just stayed comfortable and done what the organization has always done for the first, 30, I think you said you're 40 years in existence now. You could have just
Yes.
done what you've always done. But going out and doing the land trust and the multi-unit changes and working with LES and all of these different things. I mean, there is some chaos involved in that, but I think what I see and hear from leaders like you is that when you've got this vision, the reward is often on the other side of chaos. Every once in a while it's not, but often it is. So I love that about you. All right, we're winding down to the last question here, and I'd
Yeah.
like to end this, Charlie, with what is the most important thing you would like people to remember about the work that you're doing?
Oh man, I think when it comes to, I mean, we're a housing organization. Housing is um, forefront of our minds, along with community development. I think what we need to keep in mind, I mean, there are one of the things a note I wrote down is wanting to talk about the disparities that we see in society between
Mm,
black and white homeownership, between racial equity, the gap that we see there. Um, those are items that are forefront on my mind is
yeah,
how do we take on those larger challenges? But I think there's a tendency, we're at a point, the housing crisis is not going to be, there's no silver bullet. There's
yeah,
no one solution. So it really is kind of this mass of solutions. They can be big, they can be small. Um, we've had some wins at the federal level with some reforms that would be very helpful. Those would be big wins. But we also have little wins like maybe starting a home buyer savings account through the legislature this year to
yeah.
help people save for a down payment for their first home. So I think it's that whole spectrum. It's all of the things, it's all of the solutions. Um, and I think absent that, we're just going to continue to spin our wheels and see home values continue to increase, leaving behind the low to moderate income bands of our communities. And I'm just not okay with that.
Yeah.
So that drives all of the work that we do at NeighborWorks and through our subsidiaries as well.
Charlie, I appreciate that. I think that's a great way to end. I want to say I fully believe the world needs more people like you and more organizations like NeighborWorks Lincoln. Thank you
Thanks,
so
Lynn.
much for taking time out to talk with us today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
We hope you enjoyed today's Agency for Change podcast. To hear all our interviews with those who are making a positive change in our communities, or to nominate a changemaker you'd love to hear from, visit KidGlov.com at KidGlov.com to get in touch. As always, if you like what you've heard today, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.